the way we came here was a bit funny. She just sent me the link and said, "Oh, look, Marce, this is very interesting. I didn't know about it. What do you think?" And I opened the link and I started surfing and, well, discovering all the project of the open book. And I thought, wow, we must go there. That was in August. We were both on holidays, separately, but on holidays. And I entered to the link. I started making a reservation. I made it as if I wanted to book it. And when I arrived to the end, I said, I must do it. And I said, okay, accept.
Somebody had reposted an article from BuzzFeed, I think, on Facebook. And as soon as I read the article, I knew that it was something I wanted to do. And so I went ahead and booked for the first week that was available, which I think was more than 18 months ahead.
We arrived here the 7th February 2016, and we spent 2 weeks here. You can't believe, at some moments you can't believe what's happening. You think you are part of a film or of a fiction story. Because if you see this in a film, you would say, wow, how nice. But these things don't happen in real life. But yes, they do. They do happen.
And then I called my husband and said, well, this is what we're doing, Christmas 2017. We're going to Scotland and running a bookshop.
There's a story waiting inside, behind the door as it opens wide, and I wander in, hoping to find something. 'Cause they tell the stories we know and those we don't are waiting to be held and taken home. There's a strange man inside,
in a shop with books,
who knows what I like.
in a shop with books,
He'll bring a bag to my side,
in a shop with books,
for these books piled high. And if I'm lucky enough, well, there will be lots of stuff that makes me smile inside. In a shop with books
in a shop with books,
and a bag with books in a shop with books
in a shop with books,
in a shop with books in a shop with books
in a shop with books,
in a shop with books.
When I was a young lad 60 years ago, there was a bandstand here where the Silver Band played, and there was 2 tennis courts in here. And then over the years, eventually they built this garden. So that's what was originally here. I used to say I was born in the main street in Wigtown, and then I had to say, I'll rephrase that, a house in the main street. That was Gordon Henry's, the ironmonger. And I was born above that shop. The bookshop was Paulin's. It was the biggest grocers and shop and that in the town, where you could get all your food and that. And next door, Curly Tail Books, that was Mr. Stewart. He sold shoes. But I mean, they were like high-class shoes, if you know what I mean, real leather and everything, and you had to have money, Ken. If you wanted a pair of shoes, you needed a lot of money when you went in there. But in them days, I mean, we had 2 creameries. We had the distillery. We had Wiley's of Garliston, which was a big farming thing, grain mill. We had Wiley's of Baldoon, was a big agricultural business as well. And you had the sawmill at Newton Stewart. And I say we had the distillery and you had the forestry work. So there's plenty of work for everybody. And now they're all shut down. But when I was a youngster, we used to ferret rabbits and you'd take them up to the fishmonger and we would gather gulls' eggs, cycle 2 mile out and gather gulls' eggs. And before Beecham shut down the railway line, there was a train, they called it the Paddy, because it come across, the boat come across from Ireland, and Paddy's Irish, and it went to London. And John Rennie, when the game was in season and the gull eggs, he would take them up to the train station in Newton Stewart and put them on the train to go to Smithfield Market at night. 2 doors up was another shop, Macon's shop, and it was the same small grocers and if you want to can bacon and that, it was Macon's. But it went to maybe 50 years ago, 45 years ago. And that was just a house.
When I booked up for this, I just thought, wow, a bookshop of my own for 2 weeks. Sounds fantastic. Bathroom start. Toast. I reckon I'll take it. Well, I've got evidence that I've got a Kindle, and here I am operating a bookshop, so I've got to be a bit careful about that. So the charger stays in there for now. And
it very nearly was high noon for Wigtown in the early 90s. Traditional industries in decline, a town dying on its feet.
The nearby Bladnoch Creamery was the town's main employer. Last year it closed. 140 jobs were lost, and overnight the local economy was devastated.
But Wigtown has bloomed again since winning a Scottish Enterprise-backed competition to become a book town, a regeneration phenomenon which had started in Hay-on-Wye and spread across Europe.
Some books for you.
oh, fantastic! I thought you'd forgotten about it.
No, I was just a bit busy.
It's good, isn't it? There are so many people. I
Yeah.
send people down. They ask if I've got things, and I go, well, you've got to try the bookshop down the road, and then there's a few others you can try as well.
You come at the right time of year. There's people about, so
Yeah.
anyway, you can do what you want with them, price them up, put them out. And,
Do you have any instructions re the pricing?
you're getting them for free, so whatever you get happens.
Fantastic. Great.
Fine. I
Yeah.
might come over later with some more.
Yeah, that'd be great. You can have a cup of tea or something while you're here.
Cool.
Okay.
Right, okay. See
That'd be
you.
lovely. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'll have a look. Okay. Surprise.
What I think a booktown has to be increasingly is it's got to be a place where literary culture, but culture more generally, is regarded more highly than in other places.
Wow.
My name's Adrian Turpin. I'm
interesting.
the artistic director of the Wigtown Book Festival.
Jane Eyre, another Jane Eyre. Charlotte Bronte.
You know, there can be a fear of things coming in from outside, and I think you can, and I hope it's one of the things that we try and do with the festival. I try and do with the festival. I think it is possible to balance those two things. I think it's possible to be outward looking and at the same time to be deeply rooted in the kind of heritage and the history and the sense of place and the sense of people in an area, and those two things. But if you end up talking about community as this kind of monolithic thing, that can be a very conservative with a small c thing, and I think it can kind of hold people back.
So Wigtown has always had a very unique community. The way that people support one another and support the activities happening in the town has always been different to the experience people have elsewhere. Personally, I don't see it ever becoming so big that it loses that really special community spirit. I think what we'll find is that people will continue to flow in and out and become part of our community while they're here. And it's one of the things that people love, that they can dip in for a short period of time and then go back to their own lives, knowing that one of the phrases people quite often use is, "I left a bit of my heart in Wigtown."
I think the concept of the open book is absolutely fantastic. We've had people from Korea, China, New Zealand, America, Chile, all over the world. So in a way, it sort of culturally enriches the town by bringing this kind of diverse range of people here. And they then go back and market the town to whatever community they've come from. I don't sound like it's some sort of utopia, but it's great. It's a really nice place to live. I mean, it has changed. It wasn't always like that. So when I moved back, that was shortly after we'd been given the Booktown status, and a lot of the locals were very resistant to it and felt that it was something that had been imposed on them by outsiders. They didn't see it as their thing. But 20 years down the line, you can see physically the transformation of the town. Boarded up shops are all open now. It's a different place. It's completely different.
Charles Dickens, yes. Charles Dickens. I'm going to make a big mess here. Tessa the D'Urbervilles, Thomas Hardy, Rudyard Kipling.
I think one thing that the Booktown did was it did allow Wigtown to take on a new identity and to add to its identity, but without destroying what was there before. And I think we've got to be aware, the Booktown has to be aware as it goes on that it's got to continue that process. That's not a finite process.
Got £5 on those. £5? Yep, £5. That's fantastic. What part of Germany are you from?
From Hamburg.
I haven't been there, but I've been to a few other of the towns and cities.
My name's Phil Hubbard. I'm Professor of Urban Studies at King's College London in the Department of Geography. I think one of the big things to talk about in the context of something like the Wigtown project and the Booktown kind of status is the fact that the Booktown idea seems to be one that would appeal to everybody. Everybody reads books at some level. It's culturally inclusive and people think about bookselling as kind of socially connective. So a bookshop is a good thing to have on the high street. The trouble is that if you orientate a whole community towards selling books, then you're saying that in a sense that's the cultural activity that needs to be there to regenerate. It ignores all the cultures that were there before. And it's this idea that somehow the place was a cultural desert and it needs this kind of regeneration to make something happen, as if there's not things there happening anyway. So we do need that kind of wider sense of what creativity might be and what culture might be.
Belty Books is after the iconic breed belted Galloways, which is a type of cow, and we've had this bookshop and cafe for 5 years now. We first came to Wigtown 10 years ago. I belonged to Galloway and I was very keen to move back, not necessarily to run a bookshop, but given it being to university, I thought it would, why not join, because people said, yes, we need more bookshops, so I'm just coming, yes.
The town needs to keep feeling like a place where people can come and be curious about the world, be curious about Dumfries and Galloway, be curious about Wigtown, be curious about second-hand books, but be open to ideas and to be open to culture, and particularly literary culture.
I think the problem is, there's a lot of creativity and culture in every community, and sometimes this isn't really kind of embraced by cultural strategies that tend to kind of favour the type of art and culture which belongs to the more vocal, the more articulate, the more educated members of communities.
So Nancy, with love from Patricia, November 13th, 1948. Well,
yes, I love books.
It's special.
I love second-hand books, but that is not enough in the 21st century to draw people to one place and to sustain it. So it's about ideas. It's almost like trying to create the same kind of sense that you get from a vibrant, small campus town, but without a university.
Mm. Yeah. This is the beekeeping book from Russia. The only Russian beekeeping book in Wigtown. Mm.
Really interesting.
Well, it would be interesting if I could understand it. Here we are, Russian bees. Mm.
Ian, so my name's Joyce Cochrane and I'm a bookseller in Wigtown. I co-own and run the Old Bank Bookshop with my husband Ian Cochrane. I grew up 6 miles up the road from here. I went to school here and, like most of my contemporaries, left for university when I was around 17 and 18, and I came back in my early 40s. Never thought I would come back to run a bookshop in my home county. The Old Bank came back on the market and we just jumped. Nowhere to live, no shelves, no books, and a baby on the way. So we did the completely crazy thing. And here we are with about 11,500 books, a 13-and-a-half-year-old, and yeah, we're still in business.
Illustrations in the wildlife book.
Yeah. Okay, that's 5.
I think the Booktown idea seems totally benevolent and beneficial, but literature festivals are quite elitist in many ways, so I'd be very suspicious about the idea that a singular branding for a place could actually be beneficial and include everybody. And I'm sure in the research that I've found in particular, I've found that these type of events tend to be exclusive and in some senses actually resented by some local people who feel that they've kind of been imposed on their community.
Din!
Oh, well done.
Oh.
So who am I to tell you that you don't know how to spell?
Yeah.
But they've no right to take them off.
Oh, well, I said the rules are flexible.
Yeah.
I think there's great interest in the town. We had customers in last week who've been coming twice a year and are looking for property here. More and more people are wanting to come. Now the thing about that is you want to keep the town, you want the town to develop, but you don't want it to change. It's that sort of double-edged sword.
It's a really difficult one. Can you encourage regeneration without actually having gentrification? Can you have a kind of partial gentrification? The evidence so far isn't very encouraging. It suggests that when you have gentrification, it does become a kind of an unstoppable kind of machine. Hello. And that ultimately it forces out the less well off.
Oh, yeah, I know what this is.
You've been waiting patiently on it.
Well, no, it's just a nice surprise, isn't it?
But it being a book town doesn't actually bring any money in because it's all sold through the internet. And it's only like when they have the festival to get people coming in. But they don't actually spend any money. I mean, they'll go into the cafes, but they'll sit with a cup of coffee and read a book for 3 hours. But they're taking up spaces for everybody else. You know, people that do want to come in and have a meal, they can't get in because they're sitting there reading the book.
Ideal bookshelf, jigsaw puzzle. Isn't that just wonderful? I'm sorry, I'm such a traditional bookseller.
Dalmellington was also in contention for Booktown. A decade on, it's painfully clear that Wigtown's gain was this town's loss.
If we had got to Booktown, or indeed something similar, that would have been the start of something good, I believe. We're not jealous because Wigtown won it fair, but we do envy them, yes. I think anybody would, because if you go to Wigtown now, as I've done several times, it's a different place.
Well, they say. They spent about 3 weeks at the Open Book in January, and yeah, we had them over for dinner. They just hung out with us, so isn't that lovely?
Open Book seems to have worked phenomenally well, but we also need people who want to live here all the time, though, you know, and it's very difficult for local people to be able to afford housing, and very difficult for younger people to stay here. I mean, Galloway, as in most of rural Scotland, has shed young people to other parts of Scotland and Britain for generations. And more and more people retire to places like Galloway, and we need to try and offer people the opportunity to stay here if they want to.
I think it's really hard. If you've got a situation where a town is being described by the media, by the local politicians as having its kind of heart torn out of it, when it becomes that stigmatised, it's very hard to then come to anybody who says we need something new here and say no, we don't need that. We don't need that, because they will create the idea that the place is a kind of, say, it's a desert, it's waiting to be regenerated, repopulated, because there's nothing there, rather than taking a hard look and thinking, well, what actually is here? What has this place got? How can we regenerate and improve the lives of the people who are here at the moment, rather than how can we bring in new people who will, through some virtuous activity, some creative work, will somehow pull the whole place up. Empower local people to do something within their local town appears to be a much better way of proceeding.
I'm going to give you £1 coins. There you go. 3. Is that right? Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
There's a story waiting inside behind